And second, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the YouTube feed. You're good.
Okay, we will call the meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education to order on September 27th, 2021. There are 4 members present in person, and Ms. Richardson has notified us that she will be joining virtually, but a little bit late. Would you all stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to Mr. Adkins' remarks.
Okay, I want to start with I want to start with attendance and touch on that real quick. I've been sharing that with all the board members, and Ms. Kurtz has been sending that to me daily. And we had initially, when we started that, we were looking somewhere in the neighborhood of 91 to 93%. Right now, we're seeing 93 to 94%. So it's like maybe hopefully we're seeing our kids being able to stay in school. So that's always a positive. I had a chance to meet with Falling Springs, I guess you would say, Buildings and Grounds Manager, Mr. Richard Pichter, and had a really good conversation with him about all of our agreements and how everything works here in Woodford County. Also he had a visit from a vendor, I guess the vendor that sold the turf, and the vendor says that the turf is still in really good shape for 10-year-old build. So that's always good to know, because those things are very expensive to replace. Our buses, we've seen districts around us have to cancel bus runs, not be able to make exact runs to pick up kids, even rotate through neighborhoods as to what neighborhoods would be picked up. We've been very fortunate here in Woodford. We haven't done any of that. Our drivers have showed up and done what they're supposed to do for our kids. So I can't appreciate them enough. But thank you for what you've done to our transportation department. Culinary, we had a concern with the design of the new school, and I talked to I think the last time we met, I told you guys I had a phone call scheduled with Mr. David Horseman, and that was one of his concerns. He did state that the design had already been approved, so that wasn't a problem. However, if we could find another classroom, well, not even really classroom, but some more square footage. So what I've asked Michael and Sarah to be looking at, I started to call her Sue. What I've asked them to look at is the possibility of another classroom, and he's been able to find that. Now he's just trying to figure out probably within 100 feet of where it's going to look the nicest. And right now it's pretty well straight across from the culinary labs and all the other classrooms. Am I correct, Michael?
Yeah, we have a couple different options.
Okay. Yeah, there were some windows that you had a concern about.
Yeah, but we gotta keep the big picture in mind. We'll have something in the next few days.
Yeah. And then extracurriculars, I want to touch on. We've got our student representative here tonight. They've been over playing a little golf today, and they placed 4th out of 17 teams, which is really, really good. Congratulations on that. We've also looking at our football teams. We're looking at our soccer teams. We're looking at all of our extracurriculars. Our orchestra was over and played for the Continuous Summit. That's a statewide conference. So folks from across the state got to hear Woodford County's orchestra. So that's just awesome things that our kids are doing, participating in, and that's what we have to celebrate. That winds up my report. I hope that was, I'm sure I forgot something, but I hope that was close to everything.
We'll let you come back to it if you
Okay.
think of something. All right, thank you, Mr. Adkins. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the August financial report? There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion?
I did have some discussion. Is it working, my microphone? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I did have some discussion. I apologize. I was not in person last week, and so once I got home, I was able to kind of print things out and look things over. So I do have a few questions. My first question is about the Munis report. I can see that the beginning balance on page 1 says 0, and I just wondered why that's listed as 0.
Mr. Martello, would you mind to come up to the microphone so people can hear you answer?
Which report are we speaking of?
It's the Munis report.
Which one?
Sorry.
For the year to date?
Yes, for 2021, the total beginning balance just reads as 0.
Because there's no activity. If you look to the right, that's where it's going to be the number.
Okay. I looked on our financial summary and was able to get a balance of $7,239,434.
It's because that coincides with the September report for the working budget, and so it won't be posted until the end.
Okay, but that's the number?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to double check that.
It's the, Ms. Springate, it's the unassigned and the assigned. So the collective of those two numbers is gonna be that 0999.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that I was adding that right. So it appears that the beginning balance this year versus the beginning balance for the last fiscal year is $536,197 more dollars. And I just wondered if that was an increase that was caused from using ESSER funds to cover our general fund expenses.
It's a combination of both the year-to-date expenditures plus any activity, which would include the ESSER reclassification. So it's the collective of the entire activity that occurred in FY21 plus the classification of ESSER funds.
Okay. And I guess my question is, would our expenses have exceeded our revenue once again this year if we didn't use the ESSER funds and coded them to cover these general fund expenses?
The ESSER funds are helping in FY22 our expenses against the revenue piece.
Okay, so our expenses were more than our revenue without the ESSER funds added in?
That's something that we need to track
Okay.
as we go. But yes, ESSER funds, as noted on one of the slides last week, are helping the budget in FY22.
Okay.
They will also help in FY23 as well. That's the last year we can use it.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I guess my question is, what items were removed from our SR2 plan that the board approved in May to cover these general fund expenses?
So we basically looked at the different opportunities with the funds between 2 and 3. A number of the expenditures that were allocated to the schools actually ended up coming out of 3. And so roughly, a majority of those school allocations got moved from 2 to 3. That was a big chunk. The a little bit over $700,000 for the one-time incentive, that still was charged to the ESSER2 allotment, as well as a portion of the summer school.
And who approved the changes?
Between Mr. Atkins and I, we felt.
I would imagine the superintendent, I'm pretty sure I did.
I guess I just asked because when we did the plan, it was done in an open meeting, and approved by the board. We actually had some guidance from our attorney at that point. Is he on tonight?
Mr. Chenoweth isn't able to attend our regularly scheduled meetings. He's attending our planning meetings, but Mr. Conley is attending in his absence.
Gotcha. So I guess, it was a board-approved plan, and so, it just seems logical that the board would need to vote to change that plan. I know there was,
I would almost see that as day-to-day activity. I don't know.
Mr. Conley? On that, I think there was a lot of ambiguity for the superintendents from the commissioner and for boards on who was required to approve the ESSER expenditures. Would you want to weigh in on that?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I heard what you just said, so can you pose that question to me?
Sure. The question is on the different ESSER expenditures. There was.
Hang on just a second, ma'am. Somebody just logged in. It kind of hit my ears a little bit. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead again.
Okay. The question that was being posed is on the expenditures on the ESSER funds, whether or not those require board approval. I know this was something that we discussed last year, and there was some conflicting guidance from the Department of Education on whose kind of purview that fell under.
Well, it's my understanding at this point that the board would have to approve any plans to spend those funds. That being said, I'd have to follow up with Grant to see if there's been any developments on that. That has not been an issue that I have necessarily dealt with yet. I know the boards that I typically work with, the boards are approving the spending or the plans to spend those funds.
Okay, and is that in kind of, I think that they had provided a format for the different allocations of funds, and it was kind of broad strokes was the intention. At least that's my recollection of how the ESSER funding plans were put in place. Is that correct, Mr. Martello?
I know different districts had approached a manner in different ways. But yes.
Mr. Conley, from everything that I have been told, the board had to approve the assurances.
That's what I
Now, the assurances state that we will follow the guidelines to spend the money, but I'm not sure that the board has to approve every amendment or change. But obviously, you would know more about that than me. But I would like for you to look into that if possible.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the case. What I've been, that I know more than you. What I've seen, I think, are issues where board members have had things that they wanted to see done. And so those were being raised during meetings. And I think I'm going to have to take a closer look at it, because that's really just not an issue I've had to deal with yet. But we'll take a look at that and get back to you. I think Grant probably will be the one ultimately getting back to you on that, and I'll text him while the meeting's going on to see if I can get an answer, a more definitive answer on that.
Thank you, Mr. Conley.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I saw as I looked at the plan, and I'm not sure if you guys knew that you approved this or not, but you approved to pay how much for the cleaning service out of general fund?
It was pretty significant for the overall cost. Off the top of my head, I think it was $150,000 had to come out of the general fund separate from the federal allocation. So the district general fund was offsetting some of that cost.
And I would beg to say that that's what the ESSER monies were allotted for to pay for any type of expenditures created by the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So there were other things there that we touched on that probably should have been coming out of ESSER instead of the general fund. We didn't take any money from any schools. We didn't do any of that. But anyway.
And that's a great point Mr. Atkins has. All those additional FTEs that we hired in the fall.
Tell them what FTEs are.
Sure, full-time equivalent.
All
the additional teachers, all the additional great things that we did to ensure the virtual opportunity for students and to help the load on the teachers that were in person. Those were opportunities that we could have otherwise taken an expense out of ESSER dollars, but the district chose not to do that. That was an advantage that could have been taken out as well that otherwise hit the general fund, which would help the balance.
So
Yes.
what I'm saying is, there was money spent out of the general fund that pushed it closer and closer to that deficit number that could have been paid for out of ESSER funds.
Well, and I do understand what you're saying. I absolutely think ESSER funds should be used for the pandemic and for relief for the students and for making sure that we get everybody kind of caught up, healthy, emotional, social, that kind of thing. But the ESSER 2 plan that I'm referring to on May 10th that the board approved didn't really include the things that you're saying. It was a $2.1 million plan that we voted on, that we approved. And so that's the plan I'm referring to. So it sounds like...
So it didn't include the sanitization of the buildings?
We were always told that the spraying was coming out of the CARES money, and then the ESSER's money after that.
General
It was
A big piece came out of CARES, but the general fund had to
only piece we
absorb
took was
some
out
of
of
that
general fund.
expense too.
Well, and again, I'm just speaking of the plan that the board passed. I know that there were some funds that were taken from different places, and we didn't actually do a CARES board motion and board approval, but we did on the ESSER too. So I just wanted to kind of figure out exactly how that was working, where that money was going, what was taken off the list that we approved that didn't get done, how much is kind of being used and plugged in, because I just don't have a good sense of that, so I just want to understand that.
Right.
So
And
that's why I'm asking.
Mr. Martello can put that together for you, certainly, but nothing was not done. It was either done in 2 or moved to 3.
Okay.
2 is much more flexible. 3 has more guidelines as to how we can spend it.
Gotcha.
So 2 is a little more flexible. That's why we would change from 2 to 3.
Okay, so fiscal year 2021 beginning balance, and then you take fiscal year 21-22 that has the ESSER included to help with the general fund, it sounds like, is the difference is $536,197. How much of that was moved to the district's contingency fund?
I think these questions of this specificity, if you could send these in the week between, I'm all for discussing it openly, but if you can give people time to prepare specific questions, I think that would be very helpful.
I do understand, and again, I just have 2 more questions.
If you'll note the contingency, as I stated last week, it did not go down. It went up by nearly $5,000.
Okay. I'm looking
Because
at last...
it was a balanced budget as presented for the revenue and the expenditures.
Okay. I'm looking at last year's contingency,
I
and it
think
was
she's talking
$4
about the
million.
carry forward. Is it the carry forward you're talking about, Ms. Springate? I'm not sure.
It's called the contingency on this munis report, so I'm not sure. I'm just calling it what it's coded on here.
And how much is it last year?
It was $4
Oh,
million.
no, that's not what we're talking about. Then.
Well, if you'll remember, Ms. Springate, the budget that was approved last year was in the deficit of $2.6 million. And so we ended the year, based off the hard work of my staff and utilizing dollars in an efficient manner, to end up the year in the positive and not be in the red. So prior to my arrival on the 15th of September, the board adopted a $2.6 million budget deficit, but we were able to get it in the black. So yes, you are going to see a significant difference. And yes, ESSER funds are helping this fiscal year to help the burden and the blow for that cost. So yes, you are seeing those differences.
Okay, and I understand that. I just kind of want to know how much and by whose authority. So it looks like the contingency went up by 200.
I'll be up front and tell you if there was any changes made, it was by my authority, right or wrong.
It looks like the contingency went up by $289,537. And again, I guess my question was whose decision that was.
That would be, obviously that's mine.
And this is
I said
something-
right or wrong. I just, everywhere I've ever been, it's been left up to the superintendent to make the changes in a budget to balance the budget. I may be wrong.
And I would think that other board members would agree that we have been told that there was some reallocation of ESSER funds to cover some of these expenses. This is not something that we haven't, that Mr. Adkins and Mr. Martello haven't shared with us at previous board meetings and
I've
in
always
written
been
communications.
under the assumption that it is up to the board to approve bills and approve the budget, not to pick and choose in the budget.
I understand what you're saying,
To
and I
me,
respect.
that would be day-to-day activity, I would think.
I understand what you're saying, and I respect that. My questions have more to do with just accountability of those federal funds. There's a lot more accountability attached when they're
Absolutely. We
in
just-
ESSER federal form versus
just had
bringing them
advanced
over and dropping them into contingency. So what we had done in the past was when we had extra money at the end of the year, we asked all the schools, could you tell us what your needs are? You know, maybe they need a set of books, maybe they need a canopy, maybe they need their driveway paved. And so that list became a list of needs from each school, and we were able to use whatever leftover funds we had to address those needs. We had a meeting, we discussed it. I think Ms. McHale brought up possibly doing something like that again. And so I'm just trying to kind of figure out in my mind how much ESSER money has been spent, where it's been spent,
And we can
what it's
certainly
being
give you
used
that.
for, and you know, who we had a plan that was approved by the board, why that changed. I'm just trying to kind of figure out what's going on.
And I think,
and so that's,
I think I told you in the first meeting I had that we were gonna take ESSER funds to balance the budget.
and with
really
all
do.
due respect, I think when a board votes on a plan and spending, I'm not sure that you can just kind of decide to change that without bringing it back before the board. And I know I told you that too. You know, I send a series of emails, and I have asked these questions outside of open meeting. And so again, I'm not trying to be contentious. I just feel like it's very important for us to know these budget things, and I can't tell from the reports that we're getting without asking some questions. So I do appreciate the information, and really that's all I had. Like I said, I just want to understand what I'm voting on.
Absolutely.
And I feel like we should have these discussions in open meeting because that's transparent. And if I have
Mr. Adler,
questions,
can I
I'm sure
speak
taxpayers may
when
too.
Sherry's done?
I'm done,
Yes.
thank you.
Go ahead.
I came in a little bit late, but I got to catch a lot of what Ms. Springate was saying. I feel like if you're gonna have questions about these type of numbers, obviously it would be productive for us as a board if Ms. Springate or any other board member who has, questions about specific amounts of money and where it's gone, if she could maybe email that to Mr. Martello or Mr. Atkins before the meeting so that we can all take a look at it and they can come back to us with accurate and specific information. That way we're not trying to hash this out in an open meeting based on numbers. We can have facts before we discuss this. I think that that's way more productive than kind of trying to put, you know, our superintendent and Mr. Martello on the hot seat here in an open meeting. So that's, I don't know if that was her intention. I'm not saying that it is. I would just like to recommend that for future meetings.
I do appreciate that, Ms. Richardson. And really, all I wanted to do was go over the documents that were attached to our agenda. So there was nothing that I went over and asked questions about except for documents that were attached to our agenda. Some were attached on Friday and some were attached on Monday. And so, you know, I really do feel like it's important to have those discussions. But to your point, I don't mind asking the questions prior to board meetings, but I do think it's something that should be discussed in board meetings. So thank you.
I would like to make one more statement. I know Ms. Springate had mentioned that when there was an addition of contingency that we looked for a way to spend it. To me, if we have facilities that are in poor condition, we shouldn't look for ways to spend that money. We should look for ways to work on our facilities. And obviously that's what Mr. Martello and I are trying to do here. Some of ESSER 2 monies can be used for facilities. Now, I'm not saying we're going to because we didn't have enough. But there are districts that are loading general fund right now. And I will not call the gentleman out, but there is an employee at KDE that said any district that doesn't have a large general fund after receiving all of these federal dollars, then they're not using their heads.
Okay. Is there
Mr.
any?
Atkins, really quick before you all move on, I've been looking at that a little bit, and it's my understanding, and Grant may correct me at some point, but the board approves the budget for those funds, and they can designate, you know, you or another group of folks to make, you know, decisions on spending within those budgets. But that at this point is my understanding. I don't know how much guidance that gives you right now, but and I've got the question into Grant as well. But that is based on what I've looked at just as we're sitting here.
All right.
That's
And
my understanding.
We
of how
actually
that
had
works.
that exact discussion when we were
Thank you,
talking
Mr.
about
Moore.
ESSER. I think I asked Mr. Hawkins if we were bound to those numbers and to those categories, and he said no.
He said it was a general
He said it was-
framework, and
yes.
then it would be discretion within that.
We have a timeline as to how long we have to amend that as well.
That's my recollection as well, Ms. McHale. Okay, I think we have exhausted this. Is there any further comment? All right, then with a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Martello. The next item on the agenda is the audience or public comment. Ms. Bailey will read the one that we have submitted.
Okay. This is from Michelle Nance. School board members, I'm making a second attempt to get answers in regards to the inconsistencies with the school policies currently in place. Once again, I'm going to ask, why is the public not allowed to attend school board meetings, but the public is allowed in every other school meeting, i.e. value engineering meeting, one which was held on September 9th, and another which will be held on September 30th, open to the public, school functions and extracurricular activities. Why are you employing a school resource officer at a school board meeting when the public is not currently allowed to be present, resulting in a waste of taxpayers' dollars? Wouldn't it be cheaper to just lock the doors to the school where the school board meeting is taking place? The school board's job is to represent the community's voice in public education. Is this an attempt by the school board to silence the voice of we, the parents? If so, it's not going unnoticed. By these school board meetings remaining closed to the public, there is very limited opportunity for parents or the community to be involved in and or voice and express our opinions, ideas, and concerns. This question about the meeting demands an answer. This is unfair. You are elected officials and you are using COVID as an excuse to hide from the public. If there is nobody else there to ask questions or voice a differing opinion, it is very easy for you to avoid transparency. Once again, this is not going unnoticed. Furthermore, on what conditions did the school receive money from the U.S. government in the form of COVID relief? And what is this money being used for? I've already sent several emails to the school administration in regards to this, but now I'm asking for the public. Looking forward to the next in-person school board meeting. Michelle Nance.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McHale. There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any comment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item A is accept notification of personnel matters. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Ms. Richardson, thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Item B is accept notification of payment of bills. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item C is approving the meeting minutes of October 23rd, 2021, October 24th, 2021, and September 2nd, 2021 board meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
I think you meant August.
I'm sorry,
You said October.
I'm sorry, I did mean August. So I'll repeat that then. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the August 23rd, 2021, August 24th, 2021, and September 2nd board meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item D is approve the meeting minutes of the August 16th, 2021 board meeting, and it is noted that Ms. Springate was absent. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion?
Ms. Bradley, I want to abstain from voting on this since I wasn't present.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. Item E is approve the creation of a preschool position as described to us last week. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item F is approving the temporary COVID sick leave. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion?
The only discussion that I would have on this one is I am 100% in favor of some temporary COVID sick leave. However, I do think that we should be offering it to all of the employees. So my vote tonight will be based on the fact that it is available only to vaccinated employees.
Can that be amended?
I don't know.
It certainly can, if that's what we want to do. Our hope, again, was to, and we had a small
We discussed,
discussion,
yeah.
like I said, was to provide an extra layer of protection for any of our staff that may have breakthrough cases that had done everything they could to protect themselves. But yeah, I mean, if the board wants it amended, we can certainly amend it.
Can I withdraw my second?
I think we need to check and see, do we need to,
What would the amendment be? I'm sorry, to cover all employees vaccinated and unvaccinated?
Yes.
that's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Angel, do we need to have a different agenda item?
We would just have to pull it
Attached.
at this point and go at it again. We could approve it at our planning meeting, or we could even do a special call if we needed. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Angel? Yeah,
They can withdraw the motion, yes.
I think so. Yeah, I think we could do that tonight.
okay, Ms.
So we can
Springate,
do
will
it
you
without
withdraw?
without the written amendment then?
We will, we'll have to add,
Okay.
it'll take 3
It can be
members to
adjusted
add
in that,
another
yeah.
item.
That's fine.
I would love to be able to do that. Thank you.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's withdraw. Ms. McHale, if you'll
I
or
would-
Ms.
I
Glass.
did not.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, and
I was gonna say, make sure you had the votes.
sure, and well, first we
I
need
mean,
to,
I can't say that. I certainly
We know what
can't
you
say
mean. We
that,
know
but
what
I
you
mean,
mean.
I would, you know,
as a proposed amendment to the agenda, would 3 members like to vote to add a approval of temporary COVID sick leave to extend to all employees rather than just those that are vaccinated?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have 2, so.
I will.
Okay, and so 3 members, Ms. Springate, Ms. McHale, and Ms. Richardson voted to add that to the agenda. We will add that as item Q.
so Gary,
And-
the amendment would be from vaccinated to all. Okay?
All right, and we will move item Q up in the agenda now and go ahead and vote on that. So is there a motion to approve temporary COVID sick leave for all employees?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Springate. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is item G, approve the amendment to the salary schedule as described by Mr. Martello last week. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
I will say, let me jump in on that. That covered our lacrosse coaches. KHSAA didn't have enough schools this year to sanction. So they're hoping to have enough next year.
Okay. How does that work with us going ahead and approving it?
I know, I've never done that.
But didn't
They
we,
do.
I think we
I think you
approved
voted
it
no
Yeah,
either way.
Yeah, we
right?
did. We approved
So-
it either way, so, but yeah, folks do that. So I'm assuming they'll just reach out and set a schedule.
Okay. And if you want to, I think Scott County, I had reached out to one of their board members and they had done the same thing.
Yeah.
So if you want to check with Dr. Hub on that to see how they had done their schedule,
I
that
think
might
they'll
be
just
it.
reach out and set schedules and continue to play it. However, it will be our high school team instead of a league team or a club team.
That's unfortunate. I hate to hear that.
I hope that I think they were 10 teams short, is what, yeah, it was close. So.
All right. I believe the item passed. Ms. Cooper, 5-0. Okay, item H is approve the authorization for the superintendent to use temporary remote instruction days. And we did have a lot of discussion about how these vary from NTI days so that we all have a good understanding on that. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion?
No, I would just say I really appreciate you already having something up and
As I say,
posted
we
and
went ahead,
explaining. Yes, thank
Ms.
you.
Bailey got something out there, and her and Mr. Asher and myself, and we all kind of jointly worked on that. And we pulled language from the way it was, I guess the terminology from Senate Bill 1. So we hope we have everything covered.
Well, thank you so much. I just think that's
Not a
the
problem
best
at all.
policy, always to give more
Absolutely.
information than less. So thank you.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Item I is the emergency declaration for the Woodford County High School gym upper bleacher mezzanine structural repair. Is there a motion to approve?
Can we have Michael update everyone on
I
that?
think we need the motion in the
We need
second,
the
then we
motion.
can do discussion.
Well, I'm not sure. If you look at the documents, there are two different documents with two different figures. So I think when we do the motion, we have to be careful about which one we're talking about.
I just see the cover sheet.
I think the amount's different. Can you open it quickly and look? So I would make a motion that we approve the second document with the amount around 300. Could you quote it exactly, please, Mr. Atkins?
I think it's 388.
Just
That amount.
Yeah.
the structural repair,
If it's the last number I was given, it's 388.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the latest. We just got Friday, actually. Am I correct, Michael?
so this is just the emergency declaration. This is not the actual amount. The actual amount would be tied to the BG1 and the next agenda item, is my understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Martello?
Correct, since we have to do it so far in advance.
Right. So one motion is the declaration of emergency. The next item on the agenda would involve the cost surrounding that.
Okay, there's just a discrepancy in one of the documents, so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the emergency declaration for the Woodford County High School gym upper bleacher mezzanine structural repair?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. And is there any discussion on that?
That allows us to take immediate action.
Right. This declaration, I think, Michael, will probably want your input on the next item, but I think the emergency declaration is pretty straightforward on
I
this.
was going to say the major advantage is that it certainly qualifies, and so the advantage is that it streamlines the.
Hey, Bob,
the
I'm not sure, can anyone hear on that? It doesn't sound like it's picking up. Allison, can you hear him okay?
Check. Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to say the emergency declaration just streamlines the KDE approval process, so it doesn't slow it down at all, and it certainly qualifies as an emergency project.
All right, thank you. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to the BG1 for the Woodford County High School gym upper bleacher mezzanine structural repair. This is where we need to take a look at the two costs that have been presented. And Michael, if you could explain to us how those vary and what the difference was between the first and the second.
Sure. I'm not even sure exactly the first cost.
First one is the
First
250.
Yeah, it was a
Oh.
projected, Michael, that you
Yeah.
gave us, and I think what we have now is the actual cost that a contractor has given us.
It is. It's early on we were looking at different strategies, right? Different approaches, and there had been a ballpark by our structural engineer, somewhere around 250,000 at that point. Now that we know the kind of pieces and parts, the actual strategy, and what it will take to actually implement it, along with some additional things that are beyond the structure, like for example, we need to take out the items that are currently in there and store them during the construction period and put them back in. So there's costs associated with that the maintenance folks didn't want to take on, just for example. And so we have a better sense of the scope now, and have been able to revise that cost estimate.
And if we know anything, it's that a BG1 is a fluid document that
Absolutely.
we will revisit this.
It's an estimate. It's our opinion of the cost, but not a guarantee of what you will see on bid day.
And it needs to fall somewhere, 10% of what?
It would, and then you would do a revise.
Yeah, you would have to
BG1.
revise if it doesn't.
All right. So the BG1, there are two, let's see. Let me make sure we have the correct one here. The BG1 that's actually attached does show the 250,000, but then the project application form shows the total. Okay, so that one shows the 387,000.
Is an estimated amount.
Okay.
BG1 attached is the correct.
Is what we,
Okay.
yeah, what the quote we got,
Done
we
for all
received,
items
yes.
Before we got final numbers.
Okay.
It's not a discrepancy. Both items were correct when they were typed up.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cooper. All right, are there any other questions for Mr. Hughes? I would like maybe to go and look and have you guys show us, what exactly we're talking about
Absolutely.
repairing here, and just be able to better describe it.
Absolutely, and I can give broad brushstrokes maybe right now. Just so we're looking at, getting a little feedback there. So we're looking at doing a new line of columns. This is on both sides of the bleachers. So it's under the storage side as well as the weight room side. So a new line of columns along the perimeter.
So, as of right now, we can't use either side of the upper bleachers.
That's correct.
I was under the assumption we could use the home
Well,
side.
and I think that's what we had been told, was that this
Okay.
affected one side.
And I told Mr. Atkins that if I miscommunicated that at any point, that the original call was for us to come out and look at one side, but when the structural engineer went back and looked at the calculations and the loading, he determined that both were in the same situation, basically.
I see.
Yep. But yeah, so we're looking at a structure that's been overloaded by the wheel loads of bleachers, which are intermittent. There's two sets per kind of section of bleachers. So you have a few sets of wheels going down through there, and that's putting all the weight into these areas. And so those sections have been overloaded. So instead, we're coming back with a line of columns and beams on both the inside and the outside walls of those spaces to support new steel structure that we're coming alongside the concrete joists and reinforcing that with some channel C-shaped steel pieces that will be bolted in and bear on these new beams. So it's effectively, we're not relying on that existing structure for any of the load. We're transferring that load into all new foundations, columns, beams, and steel reinforced joists. And that really gives us a really straightforward way of knowing, as opposed to trying to make any kind of guess about what the condition the rebar, et cetera, inside that existing concrete this really just transfers it all onto new steel structure.
So does that then eliminate sort of the wear and the stress that was caused by the wheels of the original bleachers on those original points?
Absolutely. So it's taking just those points and reinforcing them now. So you're transferring it all into new structure into the ground.
Okay.
And that would also allow us to keep our bleacher system that's
Retractable, absolutely. And because along those lines of wheels, which support the bleachers, that's where we're reinforcing the joists.
And so how much of this work can be done while school is in session? How disruptive is this going to be for our phys ed classes and different activities in the gym?
We've talked that through a little bit with at least one contractor, and they think, for one thing, there was a feasibility question just about getting the steel in and out. I mean, these are large pieces, and we did actually come out, make a lot of measurements and kind of think that through, whether or not we're going to have to do any demo in order to actually get this down there. But we did think that through, and I think it would be minimally disruptive, really, to those PE classes. Obviously, the one side is right next to your door, and they would kind of stage in the parking area outside of that. And then the other, of course, you would have to go across the gym. But other than that, I think it would be minimal disruption.
What kind of a time frame? How long would
construction period? Yeah, I think 2 to 3 months is a safe bet. 2 months for sure.
Wow.
That's great.
So. Now, I'm not saying from today's date, by the way.
No.
Let me clarify. Once the contractor is starting the actual work, yes.
And I will say that we have started conversation about where we may have to hold our high school games. I think the middle school is the next logical choice because of its size. So we have actually this morning, but I think both athletic directors have already been in touch with each other because I do believe this will go through our entire basketball seasons.
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
I think March, April for sure. Yeah.
Well, the sooner the better. And I do appreciate just really, I guess this came about in the summertime. We discovered there was an issue. So I really appreciate you guys getting all this together and moving on this because, our students really do need the gym. They really do use the gym. So hopefully it will be quicker.
Absolutely. The only thing, and Michael and I have discussed this as well, it would take us about 2 to 3, maybe even a month extra, even if now that it's already through basketball season. Mm-hmm. With this large amount of money, instead of taking just the one quote, I would like to bid it because of it being almost $400,000. At 200, 250. I would have, felt comfortable moving forward, but at $400,000, I would like to see if there's anywhere that we could shave some costs with another contractor, possibly.
How long does that add to the process if you open it to bids?
3 weeks to a month, Jeff.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Well, Michael knows that better than I do.
And you've got to remember too, we were such in a hurry to make sure we could provide adequate space for these kids with emergency declaration when we discussed this. We got really into it. When you remember, we had 4 options that we first looked at, did the research with the bleacher manufacturers. Long story short, being a public entity, fiduciary responsibility, we feel like since we're already past the basketball season anyway, let's do the fiscally responsible thing and put it out for a public bid. And so
just see what we get.
Is there not a number that above which you are required to do a bid?
So the emergency declaration is the one kind of exception to that rule.
What is the dollar amount otherwise?
Usually it's $250,000. I want to say.
That's what I was thinking, Michael.
I believe it's $250,000, and so the emergency declaration does open up the possibility of just awarding and negotiating a price. And the other thing, of course, the KDE approvals. Those are the 2 things that emergency declaration gives you the option to do. But again, it's a choice.
And here's the thing: I feel like if we could have knocked this thing out by December or something, then yeah, I mean, I would almost be willing to just go ahead. But now that we're already going to be past our basketball season, which is very unfortunate, then
Is that because of the lead time for the materials or the lead time for construction companies?
Both. I mean, I think the lead time for steel is still a bit indeterminate.
and that specific steel, I think, the way it was
Specifically,
explained to
the
us is-
channels, that are a little bit questionable, their lead time right now. That it's a steel shape that's not used. You know, the quantities of that shape are not as great as other shapes of steel, for example, and so the lead time on it seems to be a little indeterminate. We don't still have a great feel on that, even from the suppliers that we were talking to. So, yes, we're estimating on that point at this stage still. Steel at this point is a very unpredictable commodity.
Well, I mean, it's like
really
the roof,
is.
we couldn't get the insulation.
Yeah, it really is.
So there's no chance that it could be done sooner. You feel like it's pretty conservative to estimate.
I never say no chance, but I tend to err on the side of being conservative in that
Okay.
regard.
All right.
I do think it's probably a smart idea to go, if it were talking about $100,000 fix or something, again, I don't think that's a bad idea, Mr. Atkins.
Okay, I think that would be a separate agenda
Yeah, it
item
would be.
as
Yeah.
well. And we probably need to review, if we're going to do that, do we need Angel to review the specific RFP? Does that need to be an agenda item on a subsequent?
So the next step would be that we need to prepare construction documents. Well, of course, there's an agenda item to hire us, first of all, but that's a minor point here. But after that, we'll complete construction documents, and those will be bidding documents, and we'll release it just like we do any other bidding project.
Okay, so that does not
So
require
it
board
won't be
action?
an RFP on your part. I mean, we'll put it out as a public bid.
Okay.
Yeah. After the construction documents are approved, which at this point I'm assuming will be next board meeting.
Okay.
I think we can hit that.
So then, right now, for tonight's action, we just need to approve the BG1 so construction documents can be drawn up?
That's right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve the BG1 for the WCH gym upper bleacher mezzanine? I don't believe we had the motion yet, I think. Right, okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion passes 5-0. All right, item K is to approve the owner-architect agreement for the bleacher mezzanine structural repair. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Item L is to approve the increase in hours for the Migrant Education Program Assistant. As Mr. Asher described to us last week, we have been unable to fill that position as a part-time position, so we're moving it to a full-time. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Glass. Ms. McGlass over there. Is there any discussion?
I just want to make sure that I heard correctly at the last meeting. This has no impact on our general fund. This is covered through the
Yeah,
Title
this was covered through the grant.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to double check and make
We have received a
sure.
little more grant money. So.
It's very much a proactive, having the biggest impact on student achievement. And that's something that we will assess. With the growth in the migrant numbers in recent years, significant growth has brought a corresponding federal fund allotment. And so, yes, to answer the question, it's not an impact on the general fund.
Well, I'm absolutely in favor, but I always like to know where money's coming from and where it's going. So thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item M is to approve the 2021-2022 working budget. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. again by Miss Glass. I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there any discussion?
I did have some discussion about this one as well. The first thing that I just wanted to point out is that I appreciate you making the note about future unknowns. I think that's very helpful, both to board members and the public. So one that you noted was assistance of one-time ESSER funds will expire and not be available to assist the general fund expenditures. And again, I just wanted to ask how much ESSER funds have we used and what for? And it sounds like Mr. Atkins said that that's something you could put together for us.
Yes, ma'am. Off the top of my head, I know.
Oh, you can put it together for us. I mean,
Yeah,
I
just
understand. Yeah,
give them
if
exact,
you don't mind
if
putting.
you can, Mr. Martello.
Yeah.
And you should be able to certainly be able to do that.
I know right now, the one-time supplement was approximately $700,000 out of ESSER 2. The reclassification was in the $700,000 area, hitting ESSER 2, and then whatever else has come out of ESSER 2. But that's a good portion of the ESSER 2 expenditure year to date off the top of my head.
Thank you. And if you don't mind just doing the exact documents, that would be great. The other thing I noticed was that we do have an ESSER 3 spending plan on our website, but that hasn't been discussed or approved by the board. So I guess my question is, why has that not been something that we've discussed or approved?
Was, from what I can, Mr. Asher, do you recall? I thought that plan had been approved by the board. Did we discuss that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I know you guys got stakeholder input on that.
Yeah, that was part of the requirement to go in that plan.
Right, gotcha, okay.
And was there a requirement for board approval on that?
Yes.
I'm not aware.
I think there,
Yes.
again, I think the assurances took care of all the federal funds, but, I mean, if there is, I mean, we will certainly go back and approve it, amend it, throw it, whatever. We'll, whatever we're told to do.
Mr. Martello, was there a deadline for the ESSER 3 assurances?
Yes, ma'am. It was at the end of August, perhaps.
Well, the assurances are all the same. So when you all approved the assurances of the ESSER monies, they were all the same, am I correct? You have one set of assurances.
I know there's an ARP and ARP, which stands for the ESSER 3 piece. There was an ESSER 2. I think there are separate assurances off the top of my head, but I can go back and look in the GMAT portal. But again, I'm trying to recall the stuff off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear the ESSER 3 funds had to be approved by the board, and I think the deadline for that was June the 30th.
No, that's not correct.
Or July, I'm sorry, July the 30th.
That's not correct
Actually, that's
either.
not true either. They gave us another extension to August.
It was end of August off the top of my
Yeah.
head, or the mid-month, or the end of August.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I just know what I saw in the press, and I asked if it had been extended and didn't receive a response back. So I appreciate knowing that. Thank you. Let's see. I also have a question about the revenue, page 11. So on the revenue, back in May, we had $2,000 listed as the intra-fund transfer. And on this one, we have $270,000 listed. And I just wondered why that increase and where that.
Absolutely. A number of districts across Kentucky, much less the nation, use an opportunity for what they call indirect cost. And they are charging the federal program appropriately for all the time and effort outside of the direct instruction or the direct piece of that program to pay back the district initiative on choosing to elect to use those federal dollars. And so that includes your HR department, your administration, your business office, just processing payroll, onboarding, offboarding employees. And so Woodford County was one of the few districts, was the only district, I'm sorry, with the exception, I think, of maybe one fund when I came into this district that did not take advantage of indirect costs that I've worked with. So in combination with Mr. Atkins' and I myself, we sought to take advantage of that opportunity to assist and take advantage of those funds for the work that's already been done over the years, to include fiscal year FY21. So for this year, for FY22, that $270,000 reflects a piece of the ESSER dollars for indirect cost, as well as the Child Nutrition Program Fund. Because you'll recall in FY21, we received some significant revenue increases based off the federal allocations with the awarding for the opportunity for kids to get a free lunch. And we want to first make sure that the program within the food service initiative has everything that they need with Ms. Courtney or Ms. Quire for her and her staff, capital outlay expenditures, those things. Make sure there's a great meal on the table, but there's also the opportunity to take advantage of that indirect cost. And there's also an opportunity for an audit finding if you do have excessive balances and that growth continues to go beyond, off the top of my head, I think it's 3 or 4 months of fund balance for that particular
They
fund.
will require you to spend money if you're
Yes.
above X amount of dollars.
So,
Because it's federal monies that's supposed to be spent.
so yes, that increase.
We are
Ms.
talking about
Springate-
food service, correct? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right, and so I'm aware that food service has been handled a little differently in the pandemic, and the federal government has provided the budget so that we are not charging for free or reduced lunch. We are not charging for lunch at all. That's breakfast and lunch are provided to all our schools, and I appreciate that. But I think it's probably just due to the pandemic, and once the pandemic passes, that will of course not be the case any longer. So that, I guess, accounts for $120,000. So the other $150,000 or so, that's coming from special education, from where? From what federal programs?
Primarily from the ESSER dollars. You're allowed to charge an unrestricted rate for that opportunity, which is a higher rate. Off the top of my head, I think it's 12% versus 2% for an unrestricted rate on federal funds, or specifically for the ESSER dollars. So we're trying to take advantage of that opportunity.
So if you didn't do this intra-fund transfer and take the money from the school lunch and from special ed and from our other federal dollars, if you didn't do that, where does that money go? Does it go directly to the schools and to the students?
Well, I think that's a domino question to what you're asking. If we didn't take advantage of the opportunity to pay back what we're already doing, that would alter the general fund, where that expense otherwise would have a net effect on the revenue towards the general fund.
In essence, since I've been on the board, we have always sent the dollars that we get for our federal programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, we've always sent those directly to the students and to the schools, and they've always been spent there. So this is the first time that Woodford County has kind of taken this on behalf and is paying central office for giving these federal funds out to the schools and to the students.
I don't think we've ever sent food service funds to the schools. What would they do with them? They can't hire cooks. Only the food service department can
Well,
do
we've
that.
used the food service funds,
They
I guess,
can't
for
buy
food
supplies.
services.
Only the food service folks can do that. Do we keep any Title I monies back? Because again, Mr. Asher, every district I've ever been in, we've kept some Title I dollars back. We haven't sent them all to a school.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the first time, though, that we've actually transferred that and captured this $270,000, because in May it said it was $2,000. So I understand we might keep some dollars, but this on behalf kind of capturing and keeping it district for administration, HR, that's new. That's not something we did last fiscal year?
Well, we've never had $2.1 million in ESSER 2, 4.6 in ESSER 3, nor over 500,000 in CARES for ESSER 1. So that's kind of unprecedented.
Right, and so since we've had extra money, you wouldn't think that we would need to go in and take from these title programs and take from the students in the schools, since we've had that extra almost $7 million in federal
I
funds.
still don't see where we're taking any money from the schools.
Well,
The Title I monies, we just acknowledged, we hold some of it back, we have every year.
we've
Food
never
service
had,
never goes out to the schools.
We've never had this $270,000 of intra-fund transfers to capture paying our HR and our administration and our offices for these title funds before in the past. It wasn't on our May
I don't think
budget.
we're paying our offices.
It wasn't.
I think we're paying our custodians to
wasn't
help
on
clean
our-
the cafeterias. Am I correct?
It's eligibility to use these dollars to assist the general fund for all of the initiatives that they're doing, whether it's custodial, whether it's the HR work, whether it's your business office, all of the things that are not directly
It's the things
related.
we do for the food service program.
That are not directly related to that piece, but there's a cost associated for the maintenance, for the indirect piece to enable a program to go on in the district.
I understand.
If I'm a Title I employee and my salary and fringe are coming out of a Title I expense, there's not a direct correlation towards that salary and fringe expense to that employee, but there is still a domino cost associated with maintaining such programs.
I understand. I do understand what you're saying. And like I said, in the past and even in May, this is an increase of $268,000 from those programs that we're now capturing back and paying ourselves to do. We've never done that before, so that's the only reason I bring it up. It's different. I actually don't really approve of doing that. I feel like the federal funds that are allocated for the students and for the schools should go to the students and the schools as much as possible. But that being said, I just wanted to kind of clarify because that's a change and a difference.
It's definitely a budgeting difference of opinion, and I will say that possibly had we been collecting this monies and putting it back into a general fund, that we would not be having these issues with trying to finance this new school.
Well, I think we can probably just agree to differ, and hopefully the board will have some discussion about that. But I did have a question.
Ms. Bradley, this is ridiculous. Ms. Springate has made her point. She's drilled Mr. Martello, Mr. Adkins. I feel like we are literally going in circles right here. We understand that she doesn't agree with the way they're doing it. They've given us every explanation that they possibly can. Can we please move forward? They are the experts. We're here to take in their information. They've given it to us. Let's move forward. This is insane. It's time to shut that down. It's ridiculous.
I respect your opinion, Ms. Richardson. However, these questions haven't been
Ms.
answered, and
Springate,
that's why I'm
no, you
asking
don't.
them now.
You don't have to announce that you respect my
haven't.
opinion because you don't
Don't
respect
speak over
anyone's
her,
opinion
just a
or advice. I'm over this. We need to move forward. We're not being productive right now.
I understand what you're saying, but these are valid
No, you
questions.
don't. No, you don't.
that we
Ms.
cannot
Springate,
comment.
you do not. You're not going to be quiet until you get the last word, and I'm sick of it.
All right, we're going to move on.
Because
I actually have
you
more questions, Ms. Bradley. Just a few more questions,
Okay,
please.
I'm tired. Wait a minute. I'm going to mute you for
Will
right
the
now.
ESSER
Thank you.
Will the ESSER 3 reimbursements flow to our general fund? And can you just explain how that works, the process for reimbursement, please?
Again, and I would add one more time that these questions should have been submitted so that they had a chance to prepare.
Yes, it's redundant. It's like over and over and over.
Just
we're
as
wearing
you-
this out. We're not
Okay.
getting any answers
I
because nobody
have-
knew what the questions were going to be.
I think
Again,
it would be helpful going forward if we're going to have this level of specificity that we submit it prior to the board meeting so that there is ample opportunity for them to gather this information for us. That's the whole reason that we have a planning meeting and a regular meeting, so that we have a chance to review this. If something comes up in the week between these two meetings that we have questions on, we can reach out to district staff.
And with all due respect, I believe
Yes, and I would also like
ESSER
to
funds
suggest
are
that when
coming
our
into our
professionals,
general fund.
when Mr. Martello and
And
Mr.
how that
Atkins
process
give us
works
their
is
advice,
not-
Okay.
that we respect their advice and we respect the information that they give us and move forward with a decision on that.
Okay.
Repeating the same thing over and over and over just to make it a point is not productive for this board.
Okay, thank
And
you, Ms.
again,
Richardson.
I don't think
Just a
we've
second, Ms.
discussed how
Springate.
ESSER 3 reimbursement flows to the general fund and just how that process works, how the reimbursement process works. That's a new question. It's not really a detailed or nuanced question. It's just a general, how does that work question.
Okay, what I'm going to
This is
say
exactly what
is,
I'm
just a
talking
second, what we're not going to do is talk over one another. This is not what we teach our kids to do. We're going to let each other
Absolutely.
speak, and we're going to do this in a professional way. Ms. Springate, if you have any new questions that need to be addressed, please ask them now.
Thank you. Again, the question about the ESSER 3 reimbursement, how does that flow into our general fund? And can you just explain how we do that reimbursement, or how we get reimbursed?
So
The ESSER.
there are district initiatives, great initiatives that we do, that we have the opportunity to take advantage of these ESSER dollars that indirectly assist.
She just wants to know how the money is refunded.
Okay.
It goes from
Reimbursed.
the federal government to
Okay.
the schools, and then it is allocated from those funds into the different expenses.
It's like when I do every month the cash balance by fund report. Like you questioned me last week about the negative cash flow amount. Well, that's where the district has taken the initiative out of their cash and made an expense at a federal fund, paid an employee or did an initiative with a service or bought something, and then we ask for a reimbursement of those dollars.
Okay, and is that coded a certain way so you know that these were ESSER dollars?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can track where the ESSER dollars went and what they were spent on, and there are specific codes. Okay, thank you. I just
We are
wondered.
required by federal law to do that.
Well, I just wondered, so I was asking.
Federal law requires us to track every federal dollar that is spent.
Well, I just wanted to make sure. And then also, is there some way that you can report that to the board so that we would know?
You are reported with a monthly summary of a collective of the federal funds every month.
Yeah, but I mean specifically the ESSER 2 funds, the ESSER 3 funds, so that we can kind of gauge how much is spent, what we have left.
We can
that kind of
absolutely, yes. What we can do is add a line item on that monthly cash balance by fund report and report the cumulative expense each month, like we've been doing on the CARES, the first round of CARES. Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. I just want to keep up with it because it's one-time money, and I just want to know where it's going, what we're using it for. And then, I know that you were going to hopefully be able to do the expenditures.
We asked for that next month.
And then hopefully be able to break it out by ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 also. And I would just request that we get that a couple of weeks, 2 weeks before we do our budget session, so we'll be able to kind of go over that.
We have never gotten documents 2 weeks before a meeting, not in the time that I've been on the
the budget
board.
session's not until November, and I asked for this back at the tax hearing. So, and again, it's just an update. You're not creating anything new. You're just slotting in
That is
our current
okay. We're going to move on now.
information.
There's Ms. Springate. I think we've exhausted this agenda item.
With all due respect, we're talking about the budget, the working budget for the fiscal year 21-22, and I think that asking questions and being accountable and explaining things to the public, and even just so that we understand some of these things, because they're not written in here, is an important thing. I'm not really sure why you want to silence me talking about the finances and asking questions.
No one wants to silence you. We're just trying to be respectful of people's time in the room. We've had these documents for more than a week. We've had the opportunity to reach out to people. I'm saying that if you don't have any new questions, it's time for us to move on.
I actually do have new questions.
Okay.
And so again, I think it's important that we discuss these things. My next question has to do with the expenses side. It looks like, you can't really tell from here, but is the $350,000 restriction included in this budget?
Yes.
Okay. And why is it included if the board hasn't approved a resolution for the 21-22 year?
You normally approve the reclassification of those funds at the end of a fiscal year like you did in June.
So we didn't approve it for the fiscal year 21-22. We approved it for 19-20 and for 20-21. So there's been no resolution for 21-22 that I'm aware of.
The board approved the reclassification, the movement of those dollars for FY '21 in June. Off the top of my head, it was either June or May.
I'm not really aware of that, but I'll be happy to go back and kind of look at that. And then again, if you look at the May sheet versus the sheet that we got for September, the expenses in May was at $31,951,000, and then this one is at $30,698,000. So that's like $1 million difference, and I just wondered why it went down.
You were communicated with, I think, 4 or 5 weeks ago about the reclassification of the ESSER $2 on all the different areas and the cumulative amount. So that is an impact of the expenditures of your general fund on that reclassification.
Well, I guess my question is, why would expenses go down? In May, it was 31 million, and then in September, you're estimating it being 30 million. So not ESSER withstanding, why would the expenses go down by 1.2 million?
Let me get to where you're speaking to, Ms. Springate. Which
It's page 12. It's just total expenses without on behalf.
Are you speaking to the working budget?
Yes.
Off the top of my head, if we're speaking to the budget, it was a mindset on utilizing the ESSER dollars in May versus a change in mindset in July and August. As we've hashed out here in the last 45 minutes about utilizing those dollars in an efficient manner in assisting the general fund for the appropriate level of expenditures. So yes, there's the potential for a working budget back in May for the second part in a 3-part process where there's an adjustment to some of those areas.
So you do not include the ESSER funds as revenue, correct?
In May, the mindset was not to utilize the ESSER dollars in assisting the general fund. So yes, there is going to be a difference.
So shouldn't the ESSER funds be included as revenue?
Not when the mindset of at that point was there.
What about now? Are you including the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds as revenue? I didn't.
You're looking at general fund, not ESSER funds. So we're talking about two different things. The ESSER funds are going to benefit the general fund, which are going to correspond to your expenditure line items in the general fund.
And I do appreciate what you're saying, but
federal funds, Mr. Martello?
Yes,
They should be included in that federal fund.
yeah, I guess, and again, it's just very confusing, and I just want to make sure what we're talking about. So in May, you thought our expenses would be 31 million. Now in September, you're saying the expenses are 30 million. I don't know what that would have to do with ESSER, but now you're saying ESSER is included in the expenses?
Because there are this shift of some expenses that would have otherwise come out of the general fund are now coming out of ESSER. So that one-page cheat sheet for the snapshot on expenditures, the reason that those estimated expenditures are going down is the movement of some of the general fund expenditures to ESSER.
Okay, and so it went down 1.2 million. So are you anticipating spending 1.2 million of ESSER on the general fund to bring the expenses down to 30 million instead of 31 million?
I'm anticipating on the 27th of September, for another 9 months to go, there will be a drop in general fund expenditures due to the opportunity for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And as we go through the year, and we have payroll hit and fringe hit, and correlate that to the expenses year to date, there will be a reduction with the opportunity of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3.
Okay, and hopefully this is some stuff you can go over in the budget session, because I just think it's really, really important for us to get a handle on those dollars and to figure out what they're covering in general fund and how they're doing that and what.
They don't necessarily have to cover anything. They can just be stuffed into general fund, which is what several districts, well, most districts in the state are doing. A lot of districts are paying payroll with that.
Well, I've looked at the ESSER plans online for some high-performing schools in Kentucky, and the majority of them are not using their ESSER funds to pay their existing staff. The majority of them are using the ESSER funds for recovery for their students, for extra academic supports, for teaching
We are
supports,
using
for
ours for those
nursing,
as well.
for all those kinds of sorts of things. There are a couple of really good ESSER plans that I've been able to see, and I haven't seen any that's using half of ESSER 3 to pay for their existing staff. I just haven't seen that. If you could maybe send the names of those districts.
I don't think I don't think that's pertinent to what we're doing here, Ms. Springate. I just think that, again, you're running rabbit holes. I apologize if that's rude, but I feel that way.
Well, all I can say is I think it's important that we know what funds are coming in, and I think it's an important distinction. Federal funds have certain limitations and accountability, and once you move it to general funds and contingency, you don't have that accountability. You don't have that.
You absolutely do.
Not once you move to general fund and contingency.
They mandate what you have to tell them and what you have to report.
But
And we have not had an issue with that yet, have we, Mr. Martello?
No, sir, we just had a.
Federally, they will tell you what you need to report.
And again, once you move it to general fund, you don't have that same accountability. So I just want to get a handle on what's going on with Woodford County and the Woodford County budget. And since tonight was the working budget approval, I felt like that was a good time to address those questions and get some answers. So thank you.
Okay,
Well, and can I say something?
yes.
I would just like to say that, I thank Mr. Martello for coming out and giving us these numbers and standing here and taking this monthly beating that he takes from Ms. Springate. Perhaps if she'd been as concerned about numbers and, the facts back in June of 2019, there would be a school dealt with a tax. But she wasn't as enthused about actual facts back at that point. And it doesn't matter how many times you say something over and over and over, when we're depending on Mr. Martello and Mr. Adkins with their level of education, and we are citizens who are elected into these positions to give us the information, and every time we ask them for the information, they provide it to us in a timely manner. I think that we need to acknowledge that we respect that we have a certain level of trust in them, and that we need to move forward with that trust and with their knowledge, which is well beyond the knowledge of any board member here when it comes to school finances. This witch hunt that we've been on for the last however long needs to stop. We need to move forward as a board and respect these people who are giving us this information, who have not once kept any information from us. I'm tired of this. It's constant, and we're not doing anything to help our community with this.
All right.
And I'm sure Ms. Springate will have a rebuttal, but let her talk.
All right. We've had ample comment on this. With a motion and a second, all those in favor of approving the working budget say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. The next item on the agenda is for meeting safety precautions and a request to have a school resource officer at subsequent board meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale, and I will second that. Is there any discussion?
I did wonder what the cost estimate would be on this. I think I asked last week, and I'm not sure if we got a number.
Mr. Wells, do you want to weigh in?
Just a
She was
cost
asking
estimate.
a cost estimate to have SROs at future board meetings.
Like I say, it's time and a half.
Time and a half, yeah.
For their services, so it really depends on how long the meetings are. I think for now, we plan on planning regular meetings unless told otherwise, so.
What Mr. Wells said, Ms. Richardson, is that the cost would be time and a half for the school resource officers for the time that they're at our meetings.
And let me just add one more thing. It's time and a half plus, I know this is middle school and the grand scheme of things, plus the fringe. I've got to catch
Sure.
myself too. You got to always have to include that, which is roughly, off the top of my head, about 11% in this instance. So time and a half with the 11% match.
I guess the question is, can you really put a price on safety? I mean, we have a student sitting here, we have our staff sitting here. Even if we're obsolete, we have staff and students here.
Agreed.
I don't
I
think
think-
we can put a price on safety.
I think Ms. Schrock would like to weigh in.
I definitely feel safer with an SRO here. Just as a student in the school, I know that when we're in school, we always have a school resource officer, so I don't know why it'd be different sitting in a board meeting, so.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
And then the only other question I had was, since site-based councils are making a lot of the decisions and are really accountable for a lot of the controversial decisions, would it be appropriate to also have an SRO present at the site-based meetings? Is that possible?
That's a Garrett question, I think.
Because they're doing those day-to-day curriculum kinds of decisions, and I don't know why we wouldn't extend that to the site-based council meetings also if we're going to do it for board meetings.
Yeah, certainly I think that option is available if the council wants to pursue that. They're more than welcome to do so. So
Can I ask a
it's
question
an
with
option,
this
yes.
as well? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing, so I'm not trying to interrupt you, Garrett. I apologize. Whenever you're done, I want to ask a question. I apologize.
What he said is that would be an option available to site-based councils if they chose to do that. Go ahead with your question.
Are site-based council meetings open meetings with public?
Yes, ma'am.
They are? Okay.
I will say that having served on a site-based council, the public, it's pretty sparse, their attendance at site-based decision-making councils, but it should be something that we offer if they have any request for that.
And we certainly would. We've not had, to my knowledge, we've not had a request, but it's available.
For sure.
I think my understanding is the point of why we are trying to do this for board members or for board meetings, not board members, is because of the way that board meetings have been polarized with masking and with tax votes and hearings and tax increases. And I think that we have had several meetings where there have been people come in and approach board members as well as staff in an aggressive manner. And then also we can look at the incident in Anderson County last month, which I understand one board member at last month's end of the meeting or during the discussion kind of was a little bit blasé about this person came in and, oh, they forgot to leave the firearm in the car or whatever. It is a federal law as well as a state law that you cannot carry on schools or buildings that are maintained or owned by the school board. As a firearm owner and instructor, I think that it's ridiculous to say that was just an accident. It is a responsibility. You are carrying a firearm. You don't forget that. And we can't just judge who comes in and, oops, they forgot their firearm on their hip or in their bag or whatever, and rely on that person to be a good, honest citizen who isn't coming in there with intent to hurt a board member or, God forbid, our student representative or our staff who are not making the decisions that we're making. We're making those decisions for our public, for our students. Our staff and our student representative are not. So if it's not to protect us, I think that it's definitely a wise idea, and I think that I don't even think it's a questionable thing to require a SRO to be at our meetings. And if it needs to be at site-based council as well, I think that they should be. We're in a very tumultuous kind of heated time right now, and people are not, you're either on one side or the other. And people are angry and they're upset and they're without their jobs and they're being quarantined, and I don't think that safety is ever questioned when it comes to asking how much it's going to cost the district to protect their students and their staff. So I would fully recommend and also kind of put out there that just looking at this situation like the one that happened in Anderson County is, oh, they forgot, is laughable, it's reckless, and we need to move forward with making sure that our staff and our student representatives are all safe at every board meeting, especially now. There should be no question, in my opinion.
So then would we need to adjust this, or would it be a case where if a site-based wanted an SRO, they can just approach us to ask for that, or do we have to switch this?
We may even reach out to the site-based.
Yeah, I don't think we have any
schools.
authority to.
Yeah, and see if
So
they
can
so
just do it
require,
on their own.
if they have any qualms or feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
I'll have Garrett reach out and we'll certainly make that
Perfect.
available to them as well.
And a lot of times, the site-based meetings are immediately after school, and the SROs are probably still in the building.
Probably still close, if not
doing
still.
doing dismissal activities at that time. And I agree. I don't think
That
there's
is a good idea.
I don't think there's a price that you can put on safety, and I feel very strongly that this is the right decision for our board.
And I would say this cost is about as nominal as it
Yeah.
could get when we're talking about 4 hours a month here.
Exactly.
And a potential 4 hours additional, maybe 8 hours additional if
Site-based council
every
meetings
school.
go real quick.
Yeah,
Pretty quick,
I mean, I wouldn't even call it a cost at this point.
All right, with a motion and a second, and hearing all the discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the KDE Employee Vaccination Incentive. And as presented to us right now, I believe, Mr. Adkins, you're asking our approval to allow KDE to pay a $100 incentive to our employees. We would just serve as a kind of pass-through for those funds.
Yes, ma'am. And then we would be reimbursed by KDE, I think in the month of January, February. We will be reimbursed for the funds though.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Glass. On this, I would note that this approval is just for the money that is reimbursable from KDE. This is not the district offering up matching funds on that. My thought in that being appropriate is kind of hinged around the item that I requested that I sent out to the board members today from Mr. Martello regarding the incentives that we did pay our teachers and staff last year at a cost of around $700,000 to the district. I think that I'm all for serving as the responsible party for the KDE aspect of this program, but feel like at Woodford County we did this as an employee incentive last year. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, I would just like to ask, is there any way that we could make this whole for all of our employees?
It is.
Well, it's just for the vaccinated ones. So it really
Well, it's
isn't
for the
all.
ones that get the vaccination.
Yeah,
KDE
yeah.
won't refund. They won't refund the money. It's an incentive they're providing.
I understand, but my question is there any way that we could also do, the same incentive or a similar incentive so that all of our employees would get the $100?
So a
versus
vaccine
just having-
incentive for unvaccinated employees?
Well, I think that it's important, that you are treating all your employees the same. So if you're unvaccinated, you're still coming to work. If you're vaccinated, you're coming to work. If we lived in Florida, then the education department and the governor may have exact opposite. They may say, we're going to incentivize $100 for the unvaccinated because that's kind of where they are politically. So what I'm saying is, I hate that our employees that are not vaccinated, and they may have really valid reasons, wouldn't also get a $100 incentive. I understand
They
what
have
it's
till
called.
December 1st too to get that.
Well, and they did receive the bonuses last year.
I understand what you're saying. I'm simply asking with this $100 if there's any way that all of our employees could have the same incentive and that we weren't just kind of, not doing the $100 bonus for the unvaccinated. That's all I'm asking. It's just a question. I feel like it's important that we discuss things, and I also feel like it's important to be fair and equitable. I understand what it is. I'm simply asking, is there any way as a district that we could do the $100 bonuses for everyone and not just pull out only certain folks?
Okay, and I would say that I feel like I addressed that with my statement that I wouldn't support matching this even for our district employees who have chosen to be vaccinated at a cost, I believe we were told, around $80,000. I feel like we did the incentives last year for all of our people that have worked so hard through this pandemic, and this is not our program, so I would not support matching it either way. to answer your question.
Okay, and I understand that's your position, but there are 4 other board members.
They are welcome to weigh in.
I agree with you, Mrs. Bradley. I think we are just a conduit for KDE at this point. We are not endorsing or not endorsing their program. We are just simply doing what they're asking us to do. And I, too, do not feel like we should be matching it for the reasons that you laid out.
I agree. I mean, we did also like you said, Ms. Bradley, we did do the employee supplement. We were able to give our employees a raise. I think simply this is just the business dealing of okaying what KD is doing. I don't agree. I don't think we need to piggyback or add or take away anything from that program.
Ms. Richardson, do you have any comment?
I have nothing.
I'm sorry.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. Then all those in favor of, as was kind of a good description, serving as that conduit from KDE for the Employee Vaccination Incentive Program, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item P is to approve a test to stay program for our schools. And Mr. Wells, do you want to come up and tell us what your rollout, and Ms. Simpson, if you want to stretch your legs and come up too.
And we're very excited about this opportunity.
Absolutely. Garrett, you're going to have to talk loud. I don't think they can hear you. Nope, hold on.
She said yes.
She said yes.
Oh, okay.
Hey, that's better. All right. So I don't want to assume everyone knows what Test to Stay is. So real briefly, Test to Stay is an initiative that allows someone who has been issued a quarantine, which means you would typically stay home, it allows an opportunity for that individual to continue attending school. And in so doing, you would take a rapid test each day, and should you test negative, then you would get to go to school that day. And then you do the same thing the next day and the next day throughout your quarantine. The state of Kentucky has partnered with a slew of providers, labs that do this service. We reached out to several. We had several reach out to us. We kind of narrowed it down to 2. Myself, Kelly, and the health department, representatives from the health department met with those companies and thought they were both could do the job, but we did feel like one would meet our needs a little better. They're very flexible. Test to Stay can look a lot of different ways. It can be, you can do the test in the morning, the afternoon, the evening. You can do the test on site. You can do the test off site. I think as we've had internal discussions, I think what we would like to see is a Test to Stay where the company has technicians at each school, and the parents would bring the student to the school at the beginning of the day. They would do a rapid test, 5 to 15 minutes. If they're negative, they go on to school for the day and can participate in activities. If they're positive, then they can obviously, they would not be in school that day. And the lab can, with parent permission, do a PCR test, which is a different test that takes a little bit more time to get the results. But that is just a snapshot of what we would propose our Test and Stay program look like. The company that we want to work with is Ethos. They are working with, or in talks with currently approximately 50 other districts in Kentucky.
Yeah, and there's one locally here using it. I cannot recall. That may have been Montgomery County. Somebody locally is using Ethos as well.
I guess the first question or thing I would wonder is, how will we communicate? I guess we'll talk with the students once they have been identified from the health department as being quarantined, and then obviously they can't ride the bus. They have to have parent drop off.
Some districts have actually been allowing them after the Test to Stay test comes back to ride the bus.
Like in the afternoon.
Like in the afternoon.
Oh yeah.
If they didn't have parent pickup, yeah.
Okay.
We feel like it's important that parents bring them in the morning because if they end up testing positive, they're going to have to go home.
Yeah.
And so we feel like that's the best way to go.
So then when they're identified as being exposed and needing to quarantine, would we do a test at that point to allow them to stay for the day? Or the parents come, pick them up, take them home, and then the next day they can come back?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
When the health department issues a quarantine, Right now, they give them a couple options. They give, you've got the 10 days you can stay at home,
Yeah.
or I think, is it after 7 days?
I think today we were notified that after 7 days they wouldn't be contact tracing. Am I correct, Kelly, on that?
If they are notified of the exposure, if it's 7 days past their exposure, at that point, I think they're not going to even worry about the quarantine. But
And I think that was a change in guidance.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
that-
that's just changed today, actually.
And
Yes.
I think that lots
Would
of
like to
parents
have
will be very relieved to hear that. I know there's lots of factors that you guys have dealt with, as well as the health department, on, if a student has a late test, they're 4 days into their symptoms, and, maybe mom and dad thought it was a virus, not this particular virus, and then they test, and then we're backlogging their contacts. It is tough for parents to find out the exposure was 8 days ago, and we're now doing the quarantine. So that's a welcome change. I'm excited for our families on that front.
So right now, when the health department contacts a family, they give them one of two options: staying the entire length of the quarantine, or they can test out at some point. This would just be a third option that the health department would give those families.
But I guess the day that so when my kids are quarantined, it could be 8 o'clock in the morning, or we'll say 9 o'clock in the morning. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're notified, or I'm notified that they've been exposed and they're going to have to quarantine. Can they test at 9:05 to stay?
Could it be a same-day test?
Yeah.
That's not a specific detail we've discussed. I would think, in my opinion, if the lab is there on site, because they'll be here in the morning. They won't be here all day. They'll be here in the morning administering the test. So should the timing work out where they could test, I don't see why they could.
Okay.
Why they couldn't
There
test.
are some districts that are doing that.
I think
They're doing it
that's a
immediately.
great
And
option.
if they were to
I
leave
think.
us some tests, maybe our nurses could hit those folks that were identified if they were not there.
That was another question I had.
Yeah.
So are our staff nurses allowed to perform the rapid tests?
So, well, it would be the lab is going to provide the technician, so it will not be our staff administering any of the tests. They will be doing all of the tests. We'll want to have someone there for supervision, obviously, but it's their company that will be administering the tests with parent permission. Another item that I forgot to mention was we are wanting to do a pilot at one of our schools. So should you all approve and we can move forward, we are targeting the Monday that we come back from fall break. And we are targeting the middle school as the school that we would do that. And
I had told Northside initially because that was our discussion.
We had talked to Northside as well, but we thought that the size of that school, that might be a good place to kind of get started. But with the quarantines being as low as they are there, would we really get enough data, so to speak, to know if what changes and tweaks we need to make? So we thought the middle school would be a good location. So the plan, as of now, would be to do that first week when we come back from fall break at the middle school, working out any logistical issues that we may run into, and then the following week moving across the district at all of our schools.
I think this is a great option. I'm very appreciative. I think to borrow Mr. Asher's saying, we thought we were wrapping it up, and now we find ourselves in what we hope is the late stage. But thank you both, and to all of our nurses and everyone that is working so diligently with our kids for providing this option, as well as all of the other mitigation efforts that you guys have done. We're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, we are very optimistic this will make a difference.
I think this is great.
The number of students.
I know the numbers
that will
are
be able to
showing
remain in schools,
Greene County has been doing it almost the entire school year, and they're showing 92% success rate. Looking at our middle school, I think this morning I saw we either had 17 or 19 quarantined students. 92%, that would have, I can't even do the math in my head. I'd probably have 15 of them back in school.
So one final question, does that then also apply to any after-school activities that the student would be involved in?
So in talking with our health department director, she would ultimately kind of make those decisions with the quarantines, but she seems to be in favor of for any activities that day. So if the test is that morning, they are good to go to school that day and good to participate in activities that afternoon and that evening, and then they would come back the next day and do the test.
Okay.
And she also was open to our own employees as well. So our employees,
That was another question. So our employees that can...
That may help us along, keeping folks in the building as well.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
And that, again, it goes back to these It's federally funded. It's not costing the district a thing, but it's allowing us to keep kids in the classroom where we can really serve them. So,
Yep.
very
Ms. Glass?
exciting.
Oh, I think it's great. I've read as well some other stories of other districts that are doing it. It seems to be very successful statewide, so I think we have an opportunity to really cut down on our quarantines and make some kids and families happy.
Helpful for a lot of our families that,
We've been contacted by a couple of parents whose children have already been quarantined twice.
yeah, it's tough.
So,
All right, so then hearing that discussion, all those in favor of approving the Test to Stay program as described by Mr. Wells and Ms. Simpson, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, did we not?
Did I?
Okay, I thought that Ms. McHale made the motion and Ms. Glass,
I think so.
no, we can redo it just to be safe. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. There is no old business noted. There are no board member communications to pass along. The next item is a discussion item, and that is for future board meeting setups. What we had done in the past 2 months was we had reached out to the health department for a recommendation the Wednesday or Thursday prior to our meetings, and then followed that recommendation. Ms. Springate had asked that we put this on the agenda, and I do think it's a prudent addition. I would open the floor to any discussion that any board member may want to offer.
I guess my opinion would be is if we are having open site-based and PTO meetings and other things, I think it would be prudent for the board members to be board meetings to be open to the public as well.
Okay. I think that is a completely relevant point. I think that as long as we're following masking guidance and distancing as much as we can, that we implemented this when the Delta variant spiked to try and make the best informed decisions that we can. I'm hopeful that we're kind of plateauing. Our numbers are looking a little bit better. I see Ms. Simpson nodding. That makes me very encouraged. But
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that I think that it's important that we keep it also virtual for people who cannot or do not wish to mask.
Agreed.
That they can submit their comments and attend virtually as well. But I do agree that we should open up the public area if they wish to mask and follow the social distancing rules. I think that's a great idea. I agree.
all right, I think then that we can move forward with that set of assumptions, and obviously if God forbid there's another setback, then we can evaluate at that time with the best information that we have to make those decisions. Is there a need for an executive session, Mr. Atkins?
no, not to my knowledge.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass, and I will second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion passes 5-0. The meeting is adjourned.